Universalists in churches, congregations, fellowships, and societies across this country join their voices to proclaim some version of these words each Sunday morning. I always have to learn the new version when I go to a different church because they're all the same and a little different. But they are the words that announce and affirm who we are as a faith community, declaring the nature of this historic, innovative, tradition-challenging religion that we bring to the world. We gather here as a Unitarian Universalist congregation bound not by doctrine or shared belief, nor by compliance with some external authority, but each freely hearing the admonitions of their own inner voice, each of us following our own free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The fourth principle of our faith. The principles are on the back cover of your, back cover of your cover to your order of service, in case you are curious. We gather to affirm the principles that define the values we share, freely agreeing to promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, to work toward the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, to live in respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And as Carrie and Ivy's story reminded us and modeled for us this morning, in the spirit of democracy, we accept the power and responsibility, the right and responsibility of conscience, discovering what really matters to us and taking action to make a difference in the world. These principles aren't just words on paper. They are both aspirational and actionable statements of the values and vision that unite and inspire us. This month, I'm offering a sermon series based on the mission of this church, beginning my ministry here with an exploration of your stated purpose as a gathered community is a way for me to ground my ministry in your identity and to begin building the foundation for this ministry of love and intention we will engage in together over the coming years. I've said before that just as an individual has a life, a faith community has a collective life, a history and a story, an evolving presence that is something larger and deeper than its individual members. At the heart of that shared life, within our history and our story, lies a shared sense of purpose, a mission from which flows the community's transformative power. The mission of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Cherry Hill has a short form of 3 words: learn, value, serve. Your mission statement reads in full: creating a spiritual community by learning to know ourselves and others, valuing and embracing the richness of our diversity, serving others and confronting injustice to do more than each can do alone. I began 2 weeks ago with the theme of learning, continued last week with a reflection on how we value and embrace the richness of our diversity in these times of so much challenge. And so today I turn my attention to service. We say it every week, service is our law. But what do we mean, and why is that part of our great covenant? I've heard it said that the spiritual or religious impulse moves in 3 directions. One is on the vertical plane downward, deepening into the self, where we seek inner peace, solace, and abiding joy in our lives. That is a vital part of a balanced life, and we nourish that part of our lives in religious community. The second dimension of the religious impulse extends that vertical line upward or beyond, as we seek a connection to something larger than the self. Excuse me, something universal, transcendent, something infinite that is beyond the grasp of our finite understanding. Some among us call that the divine, others the evolving universe, and still others perhaps name it as the interconnected web of all existence. The third dimension we might call a horizontal connection, as we extend outward around us, beyond our individual boundaries in loving, healing, helping, or transforming relationship with the world. Connection is vital in our human lives in this world. The Nguni Bantu word Ubuntu translated as, I am because you are, affirms that relationship is inherent to human survival in the world. As South African social rights activist and Archbishop Desmond Tutu explained, quote, my humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together, end quote. I think all religious traditions share that three-directional model, with different emphases on the balance among the three. Religions in our individualistic Western European culture have tended to emphasize the combined vertical plane, the direct line between an inward, introspective, reflective faith practice, such as prayer or study of sacred texts, and the upward connection with the transcendent, relying for guidance and salvation on a presence which is infinite and powerful beyond human knowing. Universalists and Unitarians have been among those who've named that vertical dimension of religion as incomplete, holding that a religion that's only about the vertical, ignoring the horizontal, is inconsistent with the teachings of the prophet Jesus, whose identity forms the core of the Christian tradition from which our religion emerged. Universalist minister and theologian Clarence Skinner, writing in the early 1900s, offered a critique of Christianity that was revolutionary in its time, arguing that, quote, any theology that sees salvation as coming by escaping a world which is inherently unsavable is an individualistic, antisocial, medieval faith. Skinner suggests that because of the emphasis on salvation in an afterlife through the death of Jesus, the church doctrine has no social dynamic in it. And that is the social dynamic that's the actual ministry and religion of Jesus, since the core of Jesus' teaching are about social salvation, the ways we offer salvation to each other in our lives on earth. Social salvation, that horizontally connected dimension of religion, implies the golden rule, loving our neighbor as ourselves, reaching out to serve and lift up the oppressed, the poor, the suffering. Skinner's teachings form part of what theologians call the social gospel, the teaching that true religion is incomplete without the horizontal dimension, that a valid life of faith is founded upon the creation of loving, healing, helping, or transforming relationships with others. On the Unitarian side of our historical house, about the same time as Skinner was framing his revolutionary social gospel message, Unitarian minister John Haynes Holmes observed in the churches he served in Massachusetts that, quote, ours was a class church, a typical middle-class institution. Its people had high standards of respectability and culture and wanted these maintained as expressions of intelligence and moral idealism in our time. It was from this standpoint, he said, that organized labor seemed an element alien to our society. Already in the impending struggle between capital and labor, our churches had lined up, more or less unwittingly, on the side of capital, end quote. Holmes found it unacceptable that faith communities lined up on the side of those with money and power rather than on the side of the oppressed. He went on to serve the Church of the Messiah, which was later renamed Community Church of New York, and began to preach political sermons on social salvation and class conflict, drawn from his involvement with the social and political struggles of the city. He and other ministers formed the Unitarian Fellowship for Social Justice. He promoted a radical pacifism during the war fervor around the First World War, and in his views, he both broke with and transformed Unitarianism. Each week, we proclaim that service is our law. The use of the term law is pretty strong language for Unitarian Universalists, who tend to be suspicious of authority. There's a joke among us that we interpret the Hebrew scriptures to indicate that Moses came down from his encounter with God on Mount Sinai, bearing tablets engraved with the 10 suggestions. So what does it mean that we affirm our willingness to follow a law of service at the heart of our faith? Our acceptance that we are commanded, we are called to serve, affirms the horizontal dimension as a central element of our presence as Unitarian Universalists. We affirm the law of service each Sunday, immediately following after love, the spirit of this church. We serve as a way to manifest love, to bring it alive in the world, reflecting the ideal love that we may know as God, as the spirit of life, as universal wholeness, as the essence of all that is, the connective fiber of the universe. The law of service in our tradition reflects the revolutionary social gospel initiatives within our Universalist and Unitarian heritage, challenging what Skinner called an individualistic, antisocial, medieval faith to become a religion that brings a powerful transformative presence into the world. Serving others and confronting injustice to do more than each can do alone. In the language of the UUCCH Mission, we link the ideas of serving others and confronting injustice. And we are explicit that this is not an individual mandate, but something we undertake together, accomplishing more, having a greater impact together than any one of us can do alone. So, what does it mean to serve? What does it mean to have an impact? Carrie posed that question this morning. Do I have to quit my job, give up all my possessions, devote my life to a great cause, which I believe? Sure, you could do that, and some people certainly do. I once knew a young man who left his job to go to the Pacific Northwest and spend months on a platform in a tree to protect and prevent the logging of old-growth forests. That was his way to serve a cause he felt was crucial to the future of our planet. I am not suggesting you go out and climb a tree, however. We have the amazing story of Americans Waitstill and Martha Sharp, a Unitarian minister and his wife, who accepted the request from the Unitarian Service Committee to leave their family and cross the ocean to work in Prague in 1939, helping people who were endangered by the Nazi oppression to escape to the United States. After narrowly escaping arrest in Prague, the Sharps worked in Portugal and southern France to distribute food and to help Jews, intellectuals, and others, including Unitarians, escape. Martha organized a transport of children to the United States, which became a model for later transports of child refugees. Martha and Waitstill Sharp were among the Americans honored by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations, a distinction granted to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. The movie about their work just came out on Netflix, so you can learn for yourself that story of selfless service within our Unitarian Universalist faith. But you do not have to give up your life and leave everything you know in order to serve the world. I watch people here invest their time and love to serve a meal at Cathedral Kitchen, or spend an afternoon assembling backpacks for children who need them. People in UU churches serve in so many ways. They tutor and support teachers in the public schools, they volunteer at animal shelters, they accompany women through the protest lines at a health clinic, they stock shelves at a food pantry, they show up here to clear an overgrown garden or to tag and catalog trees for species survival in our own arboretum. And then there are those generous souls who serve close to home. They give a ride to a neighbor who can no longer drive. They shovel a walk, they mow a lawn, they cook a meal. They engage in small acts of kindness for those around them. We serve in myriad ways, large and small. We confront injustice by helping those in need, those facing oppression, and yes, by working to change society as well. You heard earlier about Ivy organizing students in her school to participate in the climate strike. Unitarian Universalist youth across the country have mobilized not only for the climate, but for gun control and the March for Our Lives, in rallies and legislative action to support education funding and other vital causes. Members of our congregation show up for pride parades, for marches and demonstrations, for actions to demonstrate support for what we believe in. Advocacy is an important part of service. Some among us run for political office, donate money to support others doing work we believe in, write letters to elected officials or to be published in the newspaper. We show up or we post about important issues on social media. There are so many ways to serve, and I love that email tag that reads, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something." It's Connie's, if you haven't figured that out. What is it that makes an action meaningful as an act of service? Is it the size of the act, the number of people it affects, the amount of sacrifice required for the action? I think it's something deeper than that. We began this morning singing "When Our Heart is in a Holy Place," and I think that's a big part of the answer. Love is the spirit of this church. And an act of service, no matter how large or small, that is done from the heart, from our sense of mission and core commitment in response to the call of love, is a sacred act. Whether it's shoveling a neighbor's driveway, serving a meal, or tagging a tree, showing up in Trenton or Washington to educate a lawmaker, sitting in an endangered redwood, or risking your life to save a stranger in peril. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. As we acknowledge and undertake this holy work, we are over and again called to live into our mission, to bring the principles to life in our lives. May love guide us as we celebrate all of who we are. We are people of heritage. We are people of commitment, people of relationship. We are people who turn our hearts toward the sacred work of creating new ways of being in the world. The work of transforming the world toward more wholeness, justice, and peace. So may it be, now and always. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join to sing together number 131 in your great hymnal, "Love Will Guide Us."